Hello there and welcome back to my YouTube channel and to today's video all about top tutor tips, how to pass your upcoming financial management, that's the F9 paper. I'm delighted to be joined by Sunil Bandari today, an ACCA F9 top tutor who has kindly come on the channel to share his thoughts, how you can pass your upcoming examination. So Sunil, feel free to introduce yourself to the viewers today.
Hi James, hi everybody on James's YouTube channel. So yes, my name is Sunil Bandari. I won't go through the whole history. I've been a tutor since 1986, and that's why the grey beard shows that. And I teach FM and AFM, and I love teaching FM and AFM. They are my specialist papers. I've been lucky enough to teach them in the classroom, teach them online, and I like writing articles on them and preparing videos on them. And I'm here to give you some guidance as far as FM is concerned.
Oh, we're going to go through all the top tutor tips. You've been there, done that, Sunil. And what I've done, guys, as well is I've put all of his details, all of his tags down below. Feel free to get in touch. And also the timings for the video will be down there as well, because we're going to go through, as we said, top tutor tips. What would you have liked to have known before doing financial management? What things not to do in order maybe not to fail it for the first time, or what to do if you failed it before. So Sunil, kick us off. What is one of the first fundamental things, how to pass the actual financial management ACCA paper, in your opinion?
Okay, so let's talk about it from the point of view of a first-time candidate. I think the first key issue is you have to make sure you know that FM has got quite a broad syllabus coverage. So you've got a lot of areas that you've got to look at: financial management function, financial management environment, investment appraisal, working capital management, business valuations, business finance, and cost of capital, risk management. So you've got quite a wide number of areas to look at. So the first fundamental principle of making sure you pass FM is know the syllabus. Know the syllabus, right? Yes, I admit, I will point out, 3 topics carry greater weighting: investment appraisal, the area of business finance and cost of capital, and the area of working capital, because they can be tested in any part of the paper, you know, but they also are the ones that will be tested in section C of the paper, in the constructive response. So at the outset, it's important that if a candidate was going, for example, to March or June now, you say to yourself, before you get to revision, before you get to application, know what you've got to apply. Know those areas. And I would also, at the learning phase, keep in mind 60% of this paper is calculation and 40% is theory based. So at the learning phase, I would always say to any candidate, it is more important to make sure you know the processes of the calculation and know the outline of the theory, because the theory can be learned, digested during the revision phase. Why do I say that, James? Because if you were, and I'm pleased to not, this is with due respect to law lecturers, with all due respect to law, right? When you go to learn and pass the law paper, you learn it 2 weeks before, you go in and pass the exam, and then you've forgotten the law. Oh, that's the law, guy, that's me gone, right? You know, I can't remember it, right? You know, section 221 of the Companies Act, you know, if that still exists, right? That is like the theory in FM. It's like theory in FM, right? You can learn it at the end of it. You've got to know it at the tuition phase, but you can learn it on revision, right? And then use it accordingly. But if you ask me the initial element of it, the first thing you've got to do as a first timer, know that broad syllabus, make sure you put that extra weighting on those 3 areas. That's the starting point.
With the application as well. And one of the myths I always get asked questions on this is that, oh, FM is he's more calculations. So I can, as long as I know the calculations, I should be all right to pass it. I mean, you've still got to put emphasis on that theory and then also calculate, then explain what is going on. That is one of the key things to passing it, in my opinion.
Perfect, James. And when you look at constructive response now, if I give you an example of, I'll use the word fallacy, misunderstanding, right? A student prepares a net present value.
Yeah.
And there is always going to be a half a mark or 1 mark for giving the conclusion. You cannot say accept, positive accept, negative reject. No, that's not acceptable. That's not a conclusion. The conclusion would be, if you don't want me saying it, would be, as the NPV is positive, shareholder wealth will rise. This project should be undertaken. 2 sentences, right? And one of the things that's changed since we've gone to a 3-section paper, A, B, and C, is that with the written part, I would say in section C, you have to be a touch more verbose than you would have been in the past, but you don't have to be Shakespeare. You just got to write, you don't write a bullet, write 2 sentences.
Yeah.
That's
imagine if it was a proper corporate report, it's getting submitted, they want to know the details and the why behind it. But you also touched on the actual practice platform there as well, and the online systems that you have to go through. Walk and talk us through your experiences from that, and how an ACCA student can use the platform maybe to their advantage, or what mistakes are usually made from it.
Well, I'm going to say this word here, and most of the people listening to this will probably think I'm crazy, which I think I am, right? But I love the practice platform. I mean, I absolutely adore the practice platform. And I'll tell you why, and that's because, and most people know this story, that during lockdown, you know, my wife Rita was stuck in India and I was stuck in the UK. So I had the best part of 7 months, you know, on my own. And there's 2 things I became very good at. I became a brilliant cook. You know, I can make an Indian meal from scratch, as good as my mother. Well, I think as good as my mother, probably not, right? But I think I can, right? But I just started to work on the practice platform. I just started working on it. And where most people have worked on Word and Excel and then gone to a spreadsheet and word processor, I've gone the other way. I actually, you know, prior to me working on the practice platform, I was okay on Excel. I was okay on Word, but I didn't use it every day. It wasn't part of my teaching, right? But when I had those 7 months, I said, I'm going to work this. I'm going to really understand it. So I can reconcile the differences between word processor and spreadsheet, and that's what the proper names are, to Excel and Microsoft Word. For FM, it only comes in on the constructive response questions, right? It only comes there. Where you get the nice advantage with FM is that you see with FM that when the requirement comes up on Q31A, Q31B, or Q32A, or Q32C, if it's written, it will be a word processor. If it is a calculation, it will be what is going to be the spreadsheet. With the spreadsheet, if I could name 3 things that they have, which I think are wonderful for students. 1, you never need to calculate, you never need to look up a discount factor, because you can calculate discount factors on what is going to be the spreadsheet, including annuity factors, which a lot of students are not aware of. And I know very kindly, James, you're going to point them to my YouTube channel, but there is a video there for them. There's a free video showing them how to do those calculations. Right?
Oh, spot on.
The other thing it's got an NPV function and an IRR function. And that means that you don't have to do the full calculation of the NPV, and you don't have to do the full calculation of the IRR. And the IRR function has benefit for investment appraisal and for what is going to be cost of debt in a cost of capital question. The other thing with the practice platform is when you are doing the objective test questions, section A and section B, it's
Mhm.
getting used to that particular format. But I would say where the practice platform is particularly useful is in the area of what is going to be constructive response. The other thing I like about it is it allows me to set my questions there. It allows me to set my mock exams there. It allows me to give the students something that is an exact image of the format they're going to face in the real exam. Pressure, the same format, the screen, the yeah, it's got all
Oh
of
yeah.
that.
Well, you got to think what is going to help me to be at an advantage going into this exam. And I can tell you now from my old days of having to write out MPVs and put it on formulas for IRR, you're going to be at an advantage if you can calculate MPV, IRRs, the discount factors on there, annuities as well. These are the things that you need to be aware of before your examination, because it could be the difference of taking 10 to 15 minutes or less than 5 on it. And that is massive because FM is such a time pressured exam.
And I also would say this to you, I think this is probably one of the most important points I'll ever say on FM. Because you've got two lots of effectively 30 mark sections, you've got 15 2-mark section A's and then the case studies for section B. One of the issues with that 60% is you're either right or you're wrong. That's it. You either get the 2 or you don't get anything. Now, if you say my glass is half empty, then that you would say, oh well, that's a penalty. I've done most of it right. Why I'm not given credit? But if you look at it as half full, well, if you got it right, you pick up 2 marks, right? So that's why I always say to students, be very much aware of what happens in A and B. I think students, you need to rethink your time allocation in this paper. I'm a great thinker. I'm a great believer in thinking outside of the box, right? So in this paper, forget the sort of time minutes per mark, 1.8 minutes. This is very easy. You do 45 minutes on Q31. You do 45 minutes on Q32. You do 45 minutes on section A, and you do 45 minutes on section B.
Yeah.
Now, you might have mixed that up in an order. That's the order I would do it. That's what if Sunil's doing the paper, 31, 32, A, B. I called it call a cab, CAB.
CAB.
Call the cab, CAB. The easiest way to do it. Because it's been, if you know that section C can only be 2 out of 3 topics, investment appraisal, working capital, business finance, and cost of capital, right? Yeah. And the one thing about the examiners, in my opinion, they're very fair. A lot of people say, how do you put fair and examiner in the same sentence? Well, I just have. They are very fair, in my opinion. They don't go, snow outside, off-piste, right? They stay on track, right? But in section A and B, you got to be careful. You got to be so careful.
Yeah.
Misread one word, misread one area.
Yeah, and just to be clear for everyone who's watching it now, it's question 31 and 32 are section C, where you have to physically type in or calculate on there as well. So I think that's a really good idea, because those are the trickiest areas that you always read in the external examiners reports that students, one, spend too much time on, first of all, and then secondly, don't show enough workings on there. And thirdly, run out of time. So if you're really struggling on those section C questions, just like Sunil said, maybe do them first when you've got the most amount of energy at the start.
Correct. And also because from my analysis, and look, I'm not talking from the ACCA analysis, I'm talking from my experience, right? Yeah. That students tend to perform well on A and B, on 31, 32, constructive response. And then the next best area is A, and B has been a generally difficult area. It's a more challenging area, right? Because of constantly having to be aware of the case study that you're looking at, to pull the data down, to look at your answers, right? To produce your answers, sorry. So that's why I would start with 31, 32. You don't have to do that 32, 31 if you want to, right? But then do A, and then look at B, and that way you build that. But if you think 4 times 45, it's easy.
Yeah, and you're less likely to miss track of it in the examination under that pressure. We can follow that through, and you've got to be. This is one of the key things I learned from, especially later on in my ACCA journey, is you've got to know when to move on. Where you just have to have that honest question to yourself and say, James, if I don't move on now, you can forget about the marks, because this is another really key thing to get down in your notes is it's so important you attempt 100 marks and 100% of the paper, not 90%, 80%, because then you need to get 50 out of 90, 50 out of 80.
So much harder. So much harder. It's so much. I mean, I've always worked on a rule that whether it's true or not, but I've always worked on a rule. If I'm dealing with a constructive response question, a long question, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at, should I spend 1 minute to finish off a question or 1 minute to move it to the next question? I have always thought to myself, the first 50% of time allocated to a question, you are gunning, you are looking to accumulate 75% of the marks available. And in the last 50% of the time, you're looking to accumulate the remaining 25%. So you're 1 minute from, shall I go overrun or shall I move on to the next question? Well, there it shows you 1 minute on the next question, you're going for a greater proportion of the marks. Because you basically, because there's that mental approach that early on, an early part of a question, you gather more marks in. The latter part, you don't gather as many marks in. And that's always been the case, isn't
it?
You know?
But I'm afraid it comes down to the usual advice of the more practice papers you do, to time. I cannot advocate for it as much, I'm sure. It'll probably be one of those reasons why a lot of people fail the financial management exam. But it's one of those things as an ACCA student, I'm getting a headache now thinking back to it. But it's one of those things you go, oh my word, today I've got to do a financial management past paper 2 time. I don't want to do it. I don't have to do it, but I know it's going to be so beneficial for me to do it. What are your thoughts on past papers, Sunil?
I think the past papers are, I think what the ACCA have done on practice papers are good. They're good past papers there. I think one of the key things is that the official publishers produce a bank of very good Section A and Section B questions. The past questions are predominantly in questions, in the Section C, but they are good. And the thing is about the past papers repeat. FM is not FR, it's not tax where the syllabus changes. I mean, what has been the latest areas to appear in something like FM? Well, the last topic that they brought in there was behavioral finance, and that was just a small element of it. And then a topic which I wrote an article on from years ago, Islamic finance. So it doesn't change. So therefore, the past papers, by working them, as you say, James, to time. Your last words were the key. To time.
Key thing. You don't want to do it. You don't want to do it, but you know it's going to be so beneficial down the road because you'll back to that experience in there. But what are the main reasons, in your opinion, Sunil, why people fail financial management, the F9 paper? Would you say?
Okay, why do they fail? Well, there's a classic one is that they end load. They try to revise too late. I think that's always been one. They always end load. I think what they do in relation to, as I said, in the constructive response questions, is that on the written part, they sometimes go too brief, right? They don't write enough within that side of it, right? But I think that probably the most problematical area is they get caught by the distractors in the objective test part of the paper. They don't quite read. If I give you a classic example of one, when a student studies it, they'll understand this. It will say in a question, please can you work out the share price of this company, right? And it will say, and the dividends are about to be paid. Right, and it says the dividends are about to be paid. So the answer they want is a price called the cum-div price. They want you to do the DVM to work out the ex-div price and then add on the current dividend. So let's say the calculation of the formula comes out to 226 and the dividend is 30 cents. So 226.30 is 256. And 226 will be answer B and 256 will be answer C. And everybody will click 226. I got that right because it came out. It came out my calculator, so it must be right then because it's on the screen, right? You go, hold on. It says cumdiv. That just those two words there, and I'm giving an illustration. If you don't pick up those words, that's 2 marks gone. Yeah. And I think that is where that's, to me, the reason why, and I pray that this doesn't happen, right? When I see candidates who get 48, 49%, it just drives you insane, right? Right.
So
but
close.
you know why it's happened.
Yeah.
You know it's a slight misread, right? Read it twice.
Yeah, it happens throughout the whole paper as well. It's not just section C as well. They're cheeky on it, where they'll have an "and" in the middle, where you don't answer the first part of it, and then the second part of it, you're just throwing away 4 or 5 marks, and that's especially for the discursive questions.
If we don't mind, I'll just slightly digress. I wrote an article for PQ. Me and you've both been part of, Love PQ magazine, and I wrote an article for PQ roughly 10 years ago, because I'm going to be 60 this year. I wrote it when I was 49 years old, and I said, right, I wrote it when I was 50, and I said, I'm 50, but I really want to be 49. And yet every candidate who gets 49 really wants to get 50, right? And I can't go backwards, but you can add the mark. Right, I can't go back to 49, but you can add that mark, right? And that is section A, section B. Read the requirement, read the data twice.
Yeah.
Just read it twice.
Yeah. Little things in the exams, especially with the computer-based exams, because you just be staring at the screen all the time. But just sometimes, a bit of water, clear your airways, especially moving from one section to another. Clear mindset. But again, it just comes down to by putting in the hours, putting in the shifts, and putting in the time with those past papers, that you know how tough it's going to be. Yeah. And you've just got to eke out every mark that you can get. That's the key thing.
And when you review, if you say, I marked a script for you and sent it back to you, right? When you review a script as a candidate, don't concentrate solely on the bits that you got wrong. You also have to look at the bits why you got those bits right. So what was good about those bits? What was good about your strengths, right? And then you say, well, I've got to repeat those, not lose any of that when I look at my weaknesses. And I've got to, make sure, because sometimes you can beat yourself up as to why I didn't get something.
Yeah.
We're also got to look at the positives. Why did I get something? So you look at the combination together.
Oh, really good point. Yeah, I like that. That's really good. Yeah, you think, look, I used those keywords from the requirement in C, and that helped me really guide my answer and look at the result of it. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. However, the bit which I didn't do so well on, right, now let's get that written down and we won't make that mistake again.
One of the big, with FM, because of the fact that the requirement is sitting above your response area, there really is no excuse to go off-piste, as I've said before. There's no excuse to go offline because it's above you. It's sitting there, and you should really be just constantly looking up at it on camera, looking what's it saying.
Keyword there being should, Sunil, when you're an ACCA student, and it comes down to the old phrase of fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And that's where if you're well practiced, you're well drilled, you've used the practice platform, you do those things that you're saying automatically. So if you're watching this now, you've had your pen and paper noting it down. It's just you've got to get into that flow and that system that you're comfortable, you're digesting the information, and then you're splurting out the answer linked back to that requirement, because that is, you've got to ask yourself, am I producing an answer the marker is wanting to see? Or am I producing an answer that I'm just comfortable just to write down lots to?
Here's a really good test. Right, so here's a good test. So if I wrote down an answer, so I typed up an answer without the requirements there, and I asked my wife next door, Rita, who's an art of living teacher, meditation and yoga, and I said to Rita, could you please tell me what the requirement was? So if you can read an answer and somebody can construct the requirement, it must be a good answer then.
Oh, good point. Yeah, yeah.
Must
With
be a good
those
answer,
keywords.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
should be.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you can't reconstruct the requirement, it means the answer's no good. or of limited value, because that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be able to say, well, I know what the student was, I knew what the student was asking without having the requirements there.
Well, Rita, if you are watching, Sunil has got an absolute treat for dinner this evening to keep you entertained on that. But on a more FM serious note, Sunil, are there any final key points on the top of your mind that you just got, James, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight if I didn't share it with the viewers today? They'll have their pens and paper at the ready now. Sunil, what are the final magical tips that could make those little few marks to get from 48, 49 to 50 plus?
Make sure that you start your revision early, and make sure you work steadily throughout what is going to be the whole of what is going to be your revision element. Whether you're on a revision course or self-revision, whatever you're doing, work steadily, work at a good pace. The thing that always worries me is when a student end loads, they don't take in what they should take in to pass the exam. That is often. So if you're going to the exam in March, when is, to me, the latest time you should start revision? By the end of the first week in February.
Nice.
By the end of the first week in February, right? Because you should be saying to yourself, I'm going to revise through the whole of the syllabus in a 4-week period. And you know, we all know doing mock exams is very important. Of course they are. Mock exams are really key. But you've got to make sure that before you do the mock, you've done the tuition and understood it, you've done the revision, and the revision is the key part, the application part, and then you test yourself within those exam times.
Spot on. I agree with you. Four weeks before, and then I'd say 2 weeks before, you've got to be starting on the past papers, I would say, on there, and maybe just past paper in the morning, then revision in the afternoon, because I always had more energy in the morning and I was more likely to do the past paper, to be honest with you. Otherwise, you put it off and you put it off. But
and treat, I mean, I always think you treat theory as coffee time reading. You know, I mean, I created a thing called TheoryWise, which which is just some MP4 recordings, 15 minutes of pros and cons of this, 15 minutes. And I go, while you're sitting having your cup of tea on a break, right, just put the headphones on, have a listen to this, or read a bit of, Modigliani Miller theory, right? So you make it passive. You don't say to yourself, I'm going to sit down on my PC and I'm going to start reading something. No. When you sit down on your PC, you're going to work a question or work objective test questions, right? But when you want to do the theory, do it away from your PC. You're sitting down, you're going for a walk or wherever, especially if you can listen to something. Listening is easier to listen and digest than it is to sit down and actually read it, because you never take it all in.
Well, you see, who knows? Someone might be listening to this now on a little walk.
I hope so.
Oh, I'm doing something right. But I mean, overall, Sunil, I just want to say a massive thank you for taking the time out today of your busy schedule to share your thoughts and insights. I know the guys really appreciate it as well. And if you've got any questions or comments on the video, leave them below. Myself and Sunil will see them. And I've put all of Sunil's details down there so you can get in touch with him with his channel tagged in there, guys. So I hope you've enjoyed it on there today. Enjoyed it today, Sunil?
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Well, if you've enjoyed the video, guys, give it a massive like and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any other videos, because it could be the difference, as Sunil and I have said, in getting that 50 plus rather than the 48 or that dreaded 49. But on that bombshell, we'll see you next time. Cheers.